What up, fellow nerds, and welcome to another Not Your Status Quo retrospective of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
If you like what you see, bend a like our way and shoot fire at that subscribe button.
And while you're at it, share this video with all your friends, and if you give us 2 copper pieces, we'll ring that notification bell for you.
All right, and welcome back, everybody, for another retrospective review. We took another look at Avatar: The Last Airbender. We were watching a couple more episodes, and this time around, we watched the Water Scroll, I think, the Waterbending Scroll. Yep, got that right. Okay, cool. And we watched The Deserter. Now, the reason why we decided to choose these 2 episodes is because it finally gives us more of a deep dive look into waterbending as an art and firebending. And this is the first chance that Aang will get to be able to practice some firebending. So these were 2 pretty cool episodes. It also gives us a little bit more of a look into Captain, soon-to-be Admiral Zhao. And it also kind of gives us a look into Fire Nation culture, which is something that we've discussed in some of our previous videos. We discussed how they're a very authoritarian nation. They're very nationalistic. They're very much a fascist state. And we get to see one of their Fire Days festivals, eventually, which we'll be talking about later on as we talk about The Deserter. But first, we start off with the Waterbending Scroll. And Aang is pacing around like a madman. If you wanted to know what it looks like to see somebody anxiously walk around on a flying sky bison, this is where you get to see it, because Aang is like losing his mind. If you guys remember in our last review, we were talking about the winter solstice, and Aang got some news that was put on his poor little boy's shoulders, and I can see why he'd be freaking out.
Yeah, and that's something, I questioned from the time I was born. I want to see a kid pacing on a giant sky bison. I mean, I think every kid goes through that phase growing up, and we finally got to see that in animated action.
And yeah, it's a lot of pressure that Roku put him on last episode. He's got to learn 3 more bendings by the end of summer, which normally take years to master, and he's got to master them all.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to put on somebody, and he's got to do it in order to basically stop the Fire Nation from taking over the world. And not just taking over the world, but taking over in a devastating manner, because as Roku warns Aang, once this comet comes, Sozin's comet, they're going to be powered up to an unbelievable strength. So that's definitely something that he's got to be worried about. And you can see why he's, a little bit more upset and not the easygoing, carefree Aang that we're used to seeing in these episodes. So they decide that he needs to at least sit down and practice a little bit of waterbending before he can even, before he gets a chance to get to the North Pole and visit with an actual master. And so Katara lets him know, well, I'm not a master, but I know a little bit of waterbending. And as we saw in a couple of previous episodes, including the first episode, The Boy in the Iceberg, Katara isn't a master, and she's pretty much self-taught. Nobody in her tribe was able to show her waterbending because she was the only waterbender. So it is kind of another one of those dualities where we're following Aang, who is the last airbender. And we're also at the same time following Katara, who from her tribe is the last waterbender. All of the rest were either killed off or imprisoned by the Fire Nation. Because, as we'll end up finding out while we're watching this series, waterbenders are incredibly powerful, and the Fire Nation has a right to fear them.
And, when they first get down, Aang's first instinct isn't to, hey, let's practice, let's get this done. He wants to swim. And I think it's Katara who's like, oh, no, we got us. And he's like, okay. So, he's not fully into that adult stage, but he definitely knows what he has to do. But his first instinct is like, hey, let's swim and play and let's have fun. And of course, Sokka's like rubbing it in that he doesn't have to do any of that stuff. And he's just chilling, swimming in that hole. I was like, oh, Sokka, you're going to get murdered by an airbender one of these days.
Yeah, and then Katara takes over. She doesn't let him swim. And she's like, all right, we're going to, if we're going to do this, here's the lessons. And she's amazed by how fast Aang picks up waterbending. She says it took her weeks to figure out this first move, but it'll come to you. And he figures it out in like 2 seconds. So as you can see, when she shows him a couple of different moves, how fast he picks them up, she gets annoyed. She gets a little jealous, and that's not really productive. So she calls it off for that day. So we're learning a little more about Katara as well.
Yeah, so we're finding out that Katara, she has like these motherly sort of instincts, and when she thought that she was going to have the opportunity to maybe show Aang something, happening to know a little bit of waterbending herself, maybe she thought, okay, here's an opportunity that doesn't come across every day. I get to show the Avatar how to waterbend, and I already know a little bit more than he does. He's already admitted he doesn't know any waterbending.
When I looked at that and I thought, like, he's picking up easier because he has already, I don't want to say mastered airbending, but it's probably pretty close to mastering airbending. So learning a new one is easy. It's like, hey, if you play one musical instrument, maybe that second musical instrument's a little easier to pick up. Or, maybe if, you do one martial art, the second martial art's maybe a little easier to pick up. I thought that was kind of cool how they did it. Like, I mean, he does have to learn 3 new bending styles quickly, but having known one and been trained so much his life, before he got frozen, it just came easy to him. And I kind of liked how they did it. And I liked how, Katara, being a young girl, even though she has a lot of responsibilities on her shoulder, still acted like a little girl a little bit. Like, she was so jealous that I'm supposed to be teaching you and he's passing me. They just really understand excellent characters who are deep and not, just one dimensional. They do such a great job of it all the time.
Yeah, they really do. And you know what? You actually bring up a good point that I hadn't really thought of yet. It's and the idea of a master, of a bending master. It's hard to gauge really because Aang actually says in one of the previous episodes, I believe it was the Southern Air Temple, where he's talking about how he had developed the air scooter and nobody else had thought of doing that yet. So I wonder really like what defines an elemental or a bending master in this world, because it seems like new things are being discovered all the time. You've got waterbenders who are discovering new ways to make the water flow and move, and how to gather it. I'm sure somebody at some point had to figure out how to pull water directly out of the clouds or something. And you've got firebenders who are possibly learning new skills and new moves. And, obviously you're going to have the same thing when we, when we discover more of the earthbenders as well. So it is really hard to, I think, gauge what a real master is. I think maybe a better idea would just be to call they're the most advanced at the time.
No, I think that's accurate. As things evolve, and it's just like any sort of technology. I mean, being a master of, a computer in 1980 isn't going to do you much good, with computers now. And I think that it's kind of, bending evolves like that too. Creativity in how you do it, I think, goes a long way in bending.
You mentioned that she basically decides to cancel everything for the day. She's feeling jealous. She clearly can't teach Aang anything new. He's picked up on it so fast that she kind of figures, what more can I possibly teach you? And so they decide that they're going to, forget it for the rest of the day, and they'll pick up again the following day. Now, on off to the side, we get to see what's been going on with Zuko and Iroh, and every single time we get a chance to spend time with these characters, I love it. I love seeing what Iroh is up to. Uncle Iroh is my favorite character of this whole series. I love seeing Zuko. He's just, so determined. Got to find the Avatar. We're on his trail. We're going to figure, we got to find out where he is. And Uncle Iroh, his only concern is playing a game. And we learn a little bit more about this game of Pai Sho. This happens to be his favorite game, by the way. And so it turns out they're going to basically, Team Avatar and Zuko and Iroh are going to end up in the same area without really realizing that they're in the same area, because Iroh needs to stop to find a replacement piece for his game. He needs his White Lotus piece, as he lets you know that, it's very important to his play style. And in the meantime, Katara and Sokka and Aang, they need to go and get supplies to continue their journey. So they go. And they stop at a couple of local shops. They're getting some things that they need. And they realize, oh, well, we're actually kind of short on money. We only have 2 copper pieces left. But they still happen to find a pirate ship. And, I got to ask you guys, what were your thoughts when you saw classic pirates in this world? Like, where did they even come from? Because from what I've seen so far, this is a very Asian influenced world. So I was a little bit surprised to see like your classic movie "Our Pirate" in here, and it was kind of funny to me.
Well, they did in Pirates of the Caribbean. He did go to Singapore, so they are all over the world. And I like how you mentioned that. Iroh, he's more interested in playing his game than Zuko's mission, and that scene to me, it shows that Zuko should maybe listen to his uncle a little more, a little relaxed, because he does end up, like you said, leading them to where the Avatar is, and during their time in the market with the pirates, you talked about the haggling, and Aang offers them not 1 but 2 copper pieces for the waterbending scroll, which is going to be 200 gold pieces. Shows that Aang is just still, like Keith said, he's evolving, but he can still be a little kid.
Well, and when I saw the pirates, my first thought was, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's all these nations are war torn. You have people probably deserting certain armies because either they don't want to face the Fire Nation, or it's just more profitable for them to grab a ship and go and start robbing people. So when I thought about it, because at first I was like, pirates, that doesn't make any sense. But anytime there's all of that, it's like a world war going on, basically. You're going to have people that have left the armies they're a part of, and they're just going to go and profit on their own and do their own thing. So I thought it was a nice touch. I was really happy to see it. And the whole thing about Iroh, when I feel like he has, we talked about it in him being able to see Roku's spirit animal. As I was watching this, I'm like, man, he must just have some ability to know where they're at. Like, this whole thing was a test to Zuko. Like, you're chasing the Avatar, but I need to go get this piece. He knew that Team Avatar was there, and he just wanted to test Zuko. Like, we need to just, let's go get this piece. It'll be worth our time, to see if he would actually do it and that it would pay off in the end. I don't know if that's true in any way, but he just has this sort of, like, he's a low
laissez-faire sort of way of going about things.
Very laissez-faire, and he always gets the job done. It's just amazing to me. It's so fun to watch.
It absolutely is. And he isn't able to find his White Lotus piece, but he finds a lot of instruments to add to the ship's music night, which it just infuriates Zuko to no end. The fact that basically Iroh treats this like a whole big vacation. They're on a cruise ship and having a blast, playing games, having their music night. And, Iroh is obviously very close with the crewmates. As we find out, they very much respect him for his past military exploits, and he basically just treats them like equals.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it in the one episode when he was explaining Zuko's behavior and bringing them all around. He's probably stopped multiple mutinies against Zuko because Zuko's that young hothead who doesn't really know how to handle leadership yet. So Iroh's there to kind of teach him the way. And it's been played out. I'm assuming at some point the student will become the master, and maybe Zuko is going to be a little calmer and a better leader than who he is in, season 1.
Did you say Iroh teaches him the way?
I did. This is the way.
That is the way.
This is the way. But so back to our pirate ship. We're seeing like a lot of really weird items across here, including what I think is like some sort of evil monkey statue. I was kind of waiting for the eyes to glow and maybe hypnotize one of the characters. I was hoping Sokka. I thought that would have been great. But no, so they end up finding, as Dave had mentioned, a water tribe scroll. And they ask, hey, where did you get this from? This is this is a very ornate looking scroll. And you can see the wood around it and the fine paper and all of the illustrations and everything. And it does look like it's a very expensive scroll. And all the pirate captain says is, I managed to acquire it. And let's kind of leave it at that. You really don't want to know how I came across it, which I mean, getting back to the very family-friendly atmosphere of the show, I'm sure he probably got it in a very nice and haggling. He murdered everybody, clearly. He killed them, stole the scroll. But, yeah, so they're thinking...
Or he found it, but it was sell for more if he makes it seem like he had to go through a hardship to get it. You can't trust these pirates, Doug. They're going to tell you whatever's going to get you the highest price.
Okay, I suppose that is also a possibility. But yeah, I mean, this is exactly what Aang needs. If he's going to master the elements, and he's got a very short time frame, as Roku so kindly told him that he's got to be able to master all these elements. This is what's really going to help him. And Katara thinks, well, first off, not only will this help Aang, but secretly, this is really going to help me too, because deep down, I'm really jealous that he picked up on this waterbending so quick, and I have never had anybody teach me. I finally have some actual illustrations and some actual names of real waterbending that I can really learn from, and maybe I can get ahead as well. And so, even though Aang does his hardest to really attempt to haggle with those pirates with his 2 copper pieces, which they were having none of, and I mentioned to the guys earlier that I kind of love the little meta commentary where the pirate captain actually looks at Aang and deadpan says, look, it was funny the first time, but I'm not laughing now. And I think that might be like a little inside joke between okay, that's cute, but let's keep it moving. But in the meantime, while Aang is distracting the pirate captain, well, he doesn't realize he's distracting the pirate captain, Katara is actually swindling the scroll. And to me, that really expands on her character. I really like the idea that she is so willing to go above and beyond to get what she wants, that she's willing to now steal for it, which you wouldn't think would have been part of her moral character before, but definitely is now.
Do you think she was only willing to steal because it was from a pirate? Like if it would have been a reputable marketplace in one of the towns they were visiting, I wonder if she would have been a little more leery to steal it. But because it was a pirate and, pirates are scoundrels, she was fine with it because, hey, the ends justify the means here and it's not really hurting anybody.
I think she actually says that in the episode too at the end to Sokka when he asks, oh, so it's okay to steal? And she says, well, yeah, if I'm stealing from a pirate.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. Yeah, that she does kind of imply that the fact that it was from a pirate, that's what makes it okay. But yeah, so they get started right away, and they're going to practice, a couple of new moves from the scroll. And once again, Aang is just like domineering. He is learning some great new things, and I think he sees it in Katara's face that she's getting upset, and I think he tries to, be a little bit more humble, but to no effect, and Katara clearly is getting upset. They put the scroll away, and they're thinking, okay, you know what? We're done with this for now. We don't want to draw too much attention to ourselves. But Katara, still with that jealousy bug, sneaks out in the middle of the night and goes against her better judgment. I think what she would have normally told, Sokka or Aang, she probably would have been the one to say, hey, we've got to be, careful. We can't be going out and sneaking around. But she decides, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to practice more of these waterbending moves because I want to be better than Aang by the morning. I want to be able to, learn these moves, and I want to practice this water whip and get it down before he ends up showing me up again. But the thing is, she tends to draw attention to herself. And I think the pirates realized pretty quick who it was that took that scroll.
Yeah, and that's why she's running through the market and having to use her her waterbending to freeze some ice in front of the pirates that are chasing her. And, they run into the cabbage guy. And they knock over all this stuff.
My cabbages!
That poor dude just cannot catch a break.
He needs to get a new job because this one obviously isn't working out for him. He needs to sell corn or something else.
But yeah, so unfortunately, Katara's mistake does end up getting them caught until Zuko arrives. And you think, oh, okay, well, maybe Zuko is going to be a nice guy and he's going to save the day. And he kind of sort of does. And you start thinking, oh, well, that's pretty nice that he was able to, save Katara from the pirates, but then he kind of reminds her that he has her necklace. If you guys remember from the previous episode when he ended up picking that up, gosh, that was like, I kind of like Zuko, but when he does like really creep lord stuff like that, I was just like, oh, dude, no, that's so not cool.
Iroh was just shaking his head like, oh, come on, Zuko. That's unacceptable.
It's not how you get the girl, man. That is not flirting. I told you that. But yeah, all in all, we end up with a huge scuffle between, Zuko and Iroh and the pirates. And they're all basically trying to, decide what is more valuable, this waterbending scroll, or should we just steal the Avatar and turn him in? And so now you've got, 3 different parties against one. And they're all fighting, and they're creating this huge cloud of smoke, and it's very cartoonish. It's total cartoon style. I love the fact that Aang has to use his airbending to kind of clear the field, only to like have everybody stop. Very like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck-esque. And then the smoke comes rushing back in. Oh man, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was a laugh out loud moment when he cleared the smoke. He was like,
all right. He was like, all right, never mind. And they get out of there, and they get on the boat, and they start sending the pirate ship that they stole. They're following that right down to a waterfall. They got to use their waterbending skills to keep them going over.
Yes, they do, and we get to see that Katara is quite a bit more powerful than maybe she thought. And I do love the fact that she's able to basically prove, not only in combat with the pirates and with, Zuko earlier, but she's actually a very powerful waterbender. And we're going to find out, especially in our next episode, that she might be even more stronger and even more powerful than even she realized. But we did forget to mention something very important from the market earlier. Aang's super important best purchase ever. And that is his flying bison whistle.
oh, that's right.
Yeah, Sokka makes fun of him, but it does come in handy.
Absolutely. Well, because when he originally tries it out, nothing happens. Appa doesn't hear it or whatever. But yeah, so as they're ready to go over the waterfall, because as strong as they were and as good as they were with their waterbending, unfortunately they couldn't stop the ship from eventually going over the waterfall. But thankfully, Aang's magic flying bison whistle did happen to work. Appa comes in, swoops in, saves the day, and they fly away. And man, what an episode.
It was definitely a great episode. And I just wanted, the whole Katara thing. I think what makes her so strong is her calm under pressure. I mean, there's a lot of people who could see a scroll and do all the moves, but then once it comes time, you're battling firebenders and pirates and everything else, they would lose their mind and not be able to do it, where she seems to struggle more when it's calm around her. As soon as she's thrown into that chaos, it's like she's doing everything perfect. And it just shows how much, how strong she really is and how good she is at all this stuff. She's more critical of herself when she's practicing, because when it comes time to use it, she's aces.
And don't forget, the most important thing from this episode was Iroh actually found the lotus tile in his sleeve. And so he's able to play the game again, but Zuko ruins everything by just throwing it into the water.
Oh, yeah, okay. I totally forgot about that. Oh, my God, Dave, that was great. So he thinks it's the most hilarious thing ever because, again, he doesn't really care about this Catch the Avatar mission. He cares about his arts. He cares about his games. He cares about just, chilling out, being one with the nature and the spirits. And so he's, oh, Prince Zuko, you'll never believe I had the White Lotus tile the entire time. It was in my sleeve. And it reminds me of the first episode of the Winter Solstice, where he was just chilling out in the hot tub, and how he kind of like acts like a goofy old man, and oh, you should tighten these shackles because they're hurting my old bones. Oh man, I love him. He's great. He's my favorite character.
He just shows that you can be relaxed and focused and still get stuff done. You don't have to be so intense.
So that brings us to our second episode that we are taking a look at, and that is The Deserter. So as I mentioned, the reason why we chose these two episodes is because the first one takes more of a deep dive look into waterbending as an art, and now this one is going to be our first chance to take a look, at least a decent look at learning firebending and some of the basics. So we've already seen, from Zuko and Iroh's perspective, where Iroh is showing him a little bit of firebending and some of the stances. And one of the things that he mentions to him, on the ship when he's teaching him some of the moves is you've got to have a firm stance. You've got to be planted on the ground. And so we're already learning that this might be a little bit more difficult for Aang to learn because Aang is an airbender. He's a bit more loose with things. He's a lot more, jump around. He's not a very serious individual, at least not yet. But he knows, again, this is on his shoulders. He's got to learn these elements, and he's running out of time. So, they're flying around, and they happen to be in, I think this is a Fire Nation colony. I don't think they're still in the Fire Nation. I'm not entirely positive on where exactly they are. But in this little village, this little Fire Nation village that's there, and again, I think this is a colony of theirs because they do have a lot of cities that they basically built up or taken over in the Earth Kingdom. They happen to see that there is a festival going on, but not before they see a wanted poster of Aang and a couple of other characters, which we'll talk about later on. So they happen to visit this fire festival. And you guys remember when I was talking about their just lack of observational skills when they know that they're going into dangerous territory and they decide, yeah, that's good. I'll just wear my Water Nation blues. Nobody's going to figure me out. And I'll wear my yellows and oranges that nobody but an airbender would ever wear. Nobody will figure me out. And so once again, I think Sokka and Katara are a little bit better at, quickly trying to find like masks and things to like hide themselves and make sure that they blend in at this festival, which they really didn't want to go to begin with. But Aang wanted a close-up look, and he thought, well, this is a good chance to study firebending up close. So that's his reason for wanting to go. And I think we get another great Sokka moment. I love how he is always, again, thinking with the stomach and immediately gravitates towards the food and decides to try some local Fire Nation specialty with the fire flakes. So that was great.
I also like Sokka, how he kind of, how in the Mandalorian, they had a bunch of characters saying what the audience is thinking. Well, Sokka kind of does that too, because when they're saying like, well, if it gets too intense, we'll just take off. And he says, oh yeah, because we do that every time things get intense. We just take off before things happen. Wrong.
It was nice seeing him trying to eat those fire flakes and just the total Sokka face who, so overdone, so overdramatic. Just, it really, that comic relief that Dave's always talking about that he provides, it was very evident in that beginning scene because, they were going into hostile territory. So it was just nice, take some of the tension away with Sokka, unable to eat fire flakes. It was great.
It was. And they decide that, again, against better judgment, they decide that they're going to go up and watch sort of an acrobatic show of a guy who is going to be putting on this story of a dragon, but he needs to rescue a princess and he's going to need somebody from the audience. And Aang decides he wants to play the part of the princess because, again, Aang is never thinking. He always wants to just jump into action and be friends with everybody. But our actor up there decides to choose Katara. And one thing that we need to remember from previous episodes is Sokka and Katara do not like fire. They don't like firebenders. They are definitely kind of a little bit more fearful or angry at fire because this is something that harmed their town, harmed their village, took many of their family members and their friends away. It potentially killed their mother. We still don't know exactly what happened to her, whether she died or whether, she was captured. But their village is very small, not a whole lot of people. So either they all went off to war or, unfortunately, there was a bit of a death toll. And so you can see that, they're definitely very apprehensive about this idea of fire being so close to them. And so Katara is kind of nervously sitting there. And what I really like about this moment and what I like about this scene is it gives us a little bit of foreshadowing into Aang's character. I like the idea that he is very protective of his friends, and he's incredibly protective of Katara, to the point where he sees that she might be in danger, and he decides he's going to jump up and he's going to be the hero and he's going to try and save the day. He's going to protect her from this dangerous, well, as he thinks, dangerous firebender, when it turns out it's all just an act. Obviously, this, fire dragon is just going to blow up into a bunch of confetti, but he uses an air blast and gives away exactly who he is. And so, yeah, good job, Aang. But again, like I said, I like this because it foreshadows into the type of person that he is, and we'll be seeing more of this as the episodes go on.
Well, and you made a very good point. Aang was encased in ice for 100 years, so he definitely doesn't know the Fire Nation as they are now. He stated many times, hey, I have friends in the Fire Nation. I knew a lot of Fire Nation people, so he is a lot less likely to assume the worst of people in the Fire Nation, where Katara and Sokka, like you said, they've lived through this 100-year war. Well, not the whole 100 years because they're not that old, but they've lived through this war their whole life. So they don't trust the Fire Nation because they're the enemy.
Absolutely, yeah. They are definitely the enemy. So I think the idea that they know that Aang eventually needs to learn firebending, but I think if it were up to them, if he could somehow be the Avatar without learning firebending, I think they would almost prefer that. But thankfully, again, just like with the magic bison whistle, Aang is once again rescued by luck. I swear, I'd love to know what sort of magic is over them that seems to get them out of danger. But somebody runs over and he rescues them, from being chased down by Fire Nation guards. And he happens to be one of the local deserters. So we learn a little bit more about the Fire Nation, and I love this. I love the idea that not everybody in the Fire Nation is, a ruthless killing machine. Not everybody in Nazi Germany was a Nazi. So not everybody in the Fire Nation is agreeing with the Fire Lord and agreeing with this, whole take over the entire world and burn everybody in our path. And I think that's a cool idea. I like the fact that they're showing that, there is a bit of a difference of opinion, and they're doing it right here in season 1. So I think that was a very smart setup.
Yeah, they do a good job of showing how different, people within the same nations can be different. I mean, they've shown it since episode 1 with Zuko and Iroh. I mean, talk about two totally different personalities and two totally different people. It definitely, makes for good storytelling when every character is fully developed and not just a one-dimensional, plug in waterbender or plug in, earthbender. They really do a good job of really fleshing out every character in the show so they have their own personalities and they're their own person.
And then like that dynamic that they have, like you just described with Iroh and Zuko, they have very different approaches. And, obviously Iroh is much more relaxed, but they both want the same thing. In the end, overall, I think they both want the same thing. And when this character Che is introduced to save him from on stage and he's a deserter, now there's another perspective that you're seeing that, like you said, not everybody's on board. They still have the firebending skill, but they are not on board with what the Fire Nation is doing. So there's some dissent there. So it's developed the plot even deeper now.
Yeah. I kept wondering too if them saying he was the first to ever, run away from the army and live, if that was just propaganda to scare other Fire Nation soldiers, like no one else has ever gotten away, so don't try it. This is the only guy that's ever gotten away. I'm sure other people have gotten away. They just don't want to admit it. They're the best army. They catch all their deserters. They
right. Yeah, he's just the first and the biggest name actually, because we learned that he's not just anybody.
Right. So I love the introduction of Che. I love the fact that he regards Zhang Zhang, as we learn this great firebender's name, this great first deserter. We learn that's his name. I love the fact that Che it just looks up to him with like reverence. Like not only is he the first deserter, but he's one of the greatest firebending masters ever. And I had to find you, Avatar. As soon as I found out it was you, I had to find you because I knew if you were going to need to learn firebending, it had to be from Master Zhang Zhang. And we end up, thinking, oh, wow, this great guy, Che. But it turns out nobody really seems to like Che all that much.
He definitely is not well liked by his peers, if you even want to call them peers. They definitely look down on him like he's just an annoyance.
Right. That is true. But I still love like the happy-go-lucky attitude that he keeps through the whole thing when they surround him and Team Avatar and they're like we told you that you weren't supposed to go after the Avatar, and he's like don't worry guys, I'm sure everything is gonna be fine. I'm gonna go and go into this tent and it's gonna be great. All right. But so Aang and friends are finally brought to Zhang Zhang's camp, and Aang thinks, okay, well, here's my chance. I wasn't able to really learn any firebending. I totally, screwed the pooch with in regards to that with that fire festival that we went to. But I can definitely learn from Zhang Zhang. This is going to be great. Until Zhang Zhang announces quite forcefully to him, I will not teach you firebending.
Yeah, and the thing I like about that is, Aang doesn't accept it. He goes in there into the tent and starts talking to him. And immediately he's like, no, you must leave. I'm not going to train you. And Aang says, no, you got to train me. And he turns around, and it's like he's already begun training him because he says, how can you don't even listen. You don't even listen to what I'm saying. How am I going to train you? It's like, oh, he started training him as soon as he walked in the door. But then obviously he changes his mind again, says, I'm not going to train you until Roku shows up.
So was it just me, or were you guys getting some Karate Kid vibes from that?
See, I was getting Empire Strikes Back vibe with Yoda saying, nope, too old to train, can't do it. He had 100 reasons why he couldn't train Luke, and it was all a test.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about that. And yeah, I love so we're actually going to see later on in this episode. I totally agree with you, Keith. There's definitely some hints at Star Wars. You can tell the creators of this series, they're huge nerds themselves. We spoke about that when we introduced the series and our reviews that we were going to do, how they were huge fans of other anime and of other art styles and of other products and everything. And I love the fact that they definitely nod to the Star Wars series with their whole training idea. And again, like I said, I definitely got some hints of Karate Kid, just like with Mr. Miyagi telling Daniel that no, I'm not going to teach you karate, and it's because it's a very dangerous art after all. And so this Zhang Zhang telling Aang, I'm not going to teach you firebending. And so we learn a little bit about Zhang Zhang's character throughout the series, but he's definitely he's seen some things. You can tell that he's definitely a firebending master to the point where he recognizes it for what it is, or at least he recognizes the Fire Nation's version of firebending for what it is, as very destructive, and it brings nothing but pain and death. And you can tell that's probably one of the prime reasons why he deserted. I think maybe during his time at war, he probably killed one too many people or separated one too many families. And I really think that's what's brought him to this point where he basically just wants to live as a deserter. I don't even know if this gang of folks, I don't think they're actively fighting against the Fire Nation. I think they're pretty much just living in solitude and don't want anything to do with the war. But I don't think I didn't get that hint. What do you guys think about that?
No, I didn't get that hint either. And when you talked about him deserting because of it, I was thinking too, maybe it was a lot of friendly fire that he was dishing out and hurting his own nation people. And that's another reason why he wanted to step back and get away. He's like, sure, this is powerful, but man, because we know that the Fire Nation is more than willing to throw troops in harm's way if it's going to get them the win. And I think I immediately thought, oh, God, it's like a friendly fire issue where he killed a bunch of Fire Nation men, maybe even under his command at the time. And that's why he left.
That's a really interesting point, Keith, and I agree with you. I mean, that would jade anybody who is an actual loyalist to your cause, to your country. You wouldn't want to be killing your own people. So, is that going to play out in the future? Who knows? But that would seem like the very reason to abandon and desert, as he is the deserter.
Yeah, you guys might be completely right about that, because that's honestly what got Zuko in his predicament too. It's the fact that there was a Fire Nation general willing to put his own soldiers in harm's way, which got Zuko to actually challenge this general, and eventually led to him disrespecting his father and getting banished as a result. So yeah, I could totally see that being an issue. Who knows? Maybe it could be that this general ordered Zhang to kill his, put his own troops in danger. Maybe we're seeing, a longer thread at play here.
It'd be interesting to see if that plays out at all. I don't know if Zhang comes back in any capacity in any other seasons, but I think if not, at least they built enough backstory just to write this episode to make him very interesting.
Yeah. So one thing that I really like about this confrontation of Aang, looking at Zhang is we get to see Roku again, but we sort of get to see how other members of the Fire Nation revere him in a way. So we already know that the entire world kind of reveres this idea of the Avatar as the most powerful bender, in the world, somebody who's got that connection with the spirit world, and somebody who's basically supposed to keep order among all four nations. But it seems like the Fire Nation seem to have a special reverence for Roku. I suppose part of it is most likely because he was a firebender and, somebody from the Fire Nation itself. But I feel like there might be more to it, and I look forward to, continuing to watch these episodes and learning a little bit more about Roku's character, and seeing if they expand on it even more. Because I love the idea that seeing Roku, whether it was a hallucination or whether it was Aang's, spirit self coming forward and showing itself to Zhang, whichever it was, I like the idea that seeing that is what got Zhang to change his mind. Aang didn't seem aware that anything had happened. He was just like, "Oh, you're going to train me now? Cool." And it reluctantly goes, "Yeah, I'll train you."
Do you think that, because every Avatar we've seen is this very sort of powerful looking person, do you think people, when they hear the Avatar is back, when they see Aang, they're kind of shocked that he's just this little kid? It's like, he can't possibly be the Avatar. He's not powerful like Roku or some of the others. He's just a little munchkin.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they probably are, because even Zuko was under the assumption when he saw that light blasting in episode 1 and 2. He was like, now we have to prepare ourselves. The Avatar is going to be very old but very powerful. And when he actually confronts the Southern Water Tribe, have you seen like 100-year-old man? He should look sort of like her, and he pulls Grand aside. And, so yeah, everybody is expecting like an older, powerful individual.
Yeah, I guess most of the people wouldn't have known he was frozen for 100 years, so they probably think he's like 112 years old or whatever, and just super powerful. But
he's been using a lot of lotion over those 112 years to keep that skin, nice and smooth.
It puts the lotion in the iceberg, or it gets the fire again.
This is a kid show, Doug.
Is it? I think what I said was about as tame as it gets. But,
that's true.
But yeah, so Zhang is teaching Aang like the bare bone basics. I really like that. I think it's really cool learning like some of the stances of firebending. And again, we mentioned that Aang is he's a very hyperactive kid. He's very light on his feet. He's always trying to move around, and I don't think he likes this idea of a calm nature, and it doesn't seem like airbending is a very calm sort of bending art. It's very defensive. It's very light on your feet. It's moving around quickly, because you notice that when he is fighting with airbending, he's more like avoiding most of the fights. He'll throw like an air blast his way, at Zuko or at Iroh or one of them, like just to kind of move them away. But he's not like directly causing harm to people. At least it doesn't seem that way. It's a very quick movement. So when Zhang Zhang is telling him that he's got to, climb up this mountain and he's got to spread his legs, spread them further, and he's got to plant his feet and he's got to just stand there and he has to absorb the sun. So now we're learning a little bit more about where firebenders get their prime power from, is the fact that a lot of this energy is coming directly from the sun. And Aang is definitely not feeling this, and he's basically left alone up there all day just standing, to the point where he finally gives up and he comes down and he says, why would you just leave me up there all day? And it's like, I didn't tell you to quit. And I think that's great, because like, I think part of Zhang Zhang, I think it's good training. I think it's good, like I said, Karate Kid style, good wax on, wax off. It's supposed to be teaching Aang skills without him realizing, skills that he's going to need later on to actually learn good firebending. But he wants to skip straight to the end. He wants to learn how to do the karate chops, and he wants to learn how to do the shoot the fire blast from his hand and everything. He doesn't want to do all of the basic structural stuff to learn all the stances and the moves, because as we discussed before, all of the bending arts are all about the sort of martial art movements that you're doing in order to properly bend. And Aang doesn't seem very interested in learning what he needs to learn to perform those moves.
And if you remember, when Iroh was talking to Zuko, maybe in episode 2 or 3, whenever he, fought Zhao, he kept saying, remember the basics. The basics are, the strongest point, and you got to remember them. So there's that parallel between Zuko and Aang again, because neither one really wants to focus on the basic and learn the fundamentals. They want to go right to the most powerful, amazing, cool stuff. That's where they're, that's where they want to be. They don't want to, oh, this is boring. I just stand on a mountain all day.
Absolutely.
Like you were saying about the Mr. Miyagi approach. Yeah, that's perfect. And he just does not have the patience for it. He's 12, mentally he's 12. He does not have the patience to learn the basics. And if you master the basics, everything else is going to come easier to you. And, Zhang Zhang knows that. And he's trying to get him to be more patient, build that base. And then, the saying is, the triangle, the wider the base, the higher the peak. They can, once you learn the basics, you can go farther. And this story kind of mirrors the Karate Kid in that way, like we were saying, and Star Wars. If you look at it, because Aang, gets a little impatient, he wants to know more, and then we find out that Commander Zhao in the next scene was actually trained by Zhang Zhang, and it mirrors that in Star Wars kind of way, because at first it was Obi-Wan teaching Luke. Obi-Wan did teach, Darth Vader, what turned into Darth Vader. And, when they get into battle, well, I'll let Doug talk about the battle scene with Zhao, but it's very parallel to those two stories. It's like another telling of, it's just a great story arc to show that you need to be patient and learn your craft.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And that's a very good point, Dave. You bring up how, again, and Keith brought up something very similar. There are a lot of parallels to Star Wars in this where, Aang wants to jump ahead. He wants to learn these moves. Zuko wanted to jump ahead. He wanted to learn these moves. And yes, absolutely, we find out that Commander Zhao was an apprentice underneath Zhang Zhang. And I absolutely love the total absolute nod to Star Wars that we get when Commander Zhao does come to attack. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first I want to talk about Aang's second stint at learning firebending. So once again, we get another training montage where, he's got to stand, spread his legs, stand firmly. Okay, now hold this leaf. Okay, now concentrate on the fire, absorb the sun. And he decides, you know what? I hate these basics. I want to skip ahead. And Zhang Zhang, he points out, look at Katara, how she's being in control and she's not moving about as she's waterbending. And even look at the oaf over there, and he's pointing at Sokka, who's fishing, going, hey, which I love. God, even when he's not trying, he's the comic relief. But yeah, he's concentrating on his fishing, and that's all he wants Aang to do. And so once again, he leaves Aang, and Katara and Sokka are watching him, and Aang's like, you know what? I'm gonna skip ahead. I got this. I'm gonna be a firebending master, man. I'm the Avatar. I knocked waterbending out of the park. I'm a master at that. Master Airbender. I'm about to become a master firebender. It's going to be amazing. And so he ends up burning through the leaf, creating a fireball, and like an airbender, he's tossing it around, not realizing the danger that comes with fire. Because again, he hasn't lived through the war like Sokka and Katara has. He hasn't fought in the war like Zhang Zhang has and like Zhang Zhang's troops have. So he doesn't understand the inherent danger that comes with this fire and with handling this kind of power. And instead, he's treating it like an airbender would treat air, as he's tossing it about and twirling it in the air, and then deciding he wants to try this amazing trick that they saw at the Fire Days Festival. And he decides he's going to try this huge circle of fire. And unfortunately, he burns Katara. And that was devastating. You just see this flash of fire and light, and she screams in pain, and you see the burn marks. And so, yeah, I mean, kudos to the illustration team and the animation team, because they really, like you're like, oh shit, she looks legitimately hurt. Like, that was pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely, hit you right in the heart when you saw that, because, over the 9 episodes that you've watched to this point, I mean, you've really grown fond of all of these characters. And seeing Aang, who adores Katara, be the one that harms her in that way, man, it was hitting the feels right there.
Absolutely. And so obviously, Sokka, who has already seen enough people get hurt by firebending, tackles Aang to the ground. Katara rushes off. She's screaming in pain. But Sokka is ready to just beat the crap out of Aang. And I think if Aang wasn't the Avatar, I honestly believe Sokka would have probably killed him.
Maybe not killed him, but definitely hurt him, because I do think he likes Aang and thinks of him as a friend, and he would have just taught him a lesson, because he was definitely, he was mad enough, like, hey, that's my sister, and that's your friend too. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. But this is also an opportunity where we learn about another skill that waterbenders can learn. And we're going to end up seeing this later on, that this definitely is a pretty cool skill that a lot of waterbenders can learn. But Katara finds out that she has the ability to heal. She can actually move the water around. And we'll learn a little bit more about how this actually works towards the later episodes of the season, but she's able to move the water around in a way that it causes her body to heal itself. And I think that's cool. Zhang Zhang thinks it's awesome. He looks down and he says, you have the great power of healing. I've heard of some great waterbenders being able to use that skill. And he kind of looks off to the side, and he's like, if only I could have been born with that skill instead of this deadly firebending. He's really, really got some serious guilt going on. So, you really wonder what he did that causes him to feel this way.
And foreshadowing to Katara in the future. I mean, I think it definitely is showing when he's like, oh, he went out of his way to say, I knew some great waterbenders who had this skill. It wasn't just, I knew some waterbenders who had this skill, some great waterbenders.
You're not wrong about that. Yeah. Definitely. So I was thinking that same exact thing. I think this is definitely pointing to the future, that Katara, it really is going to be a great waterbender. And I mean, her skills have already gotten really good ever since, practicing with the waterbending scroll. She's already gotten very good. And she could easily become a waterbending master, possibly for Aang. But we don't have time for that right now because we're in danger. Zhao is here, and he is going to capture the Avatar. And he's ready to do whatever it takes. Kind of sounds like Zuko, but he's going to do whatever it takes to catch the Avatar. And we end up finding out that Zhang Zhang is Zhao's old master. And we get like a total, New Hope kind of moment here where, Obi-Wan and Vader confront each other. And, Zhang Zhang says, hello, old master. he says, and he basically kind of quips in a way that you can tell it's a direct influence. He's like, well, now I'm the master. And and I love that. It was such a great scene.
Do you think Zhao was not given the rank of master? Forget it.
No, he definitely wasn't. When he sat along the panel of the Firebending Council, they said that you can have a seat on this council, but we will not grant you the title of master. Oh God, yeah, I need to see that scene. That would be just amazing.
Well, what Zhao does in this scene is prove what Zhang was trying to teach to Aang, and that's patience. He has no patience. He just is willy-nilly trying to destroy the Avatar. And, like you said, the Avatar jumps around in battle, avoids things, and he ends up setting all 3 ships that he brought with him on fire. He screws himself, and Aang's just like, all right, I'm out of here. See you later.
And I love how Aang works that out, too. I love how as soon as Aang realizes who Zhao is to Zhang, once he realizes, because Zhang told him about one of his previous pupils who wanted to jump ahead and who wanted to skip all of the fundamentals and all the basics of firebending. And as soon as Aang realizes, oh, that's Zhao, it's like he knows instantly what to do. And so he's doing exactly what Dave said. He's jumping around. He's basically tricking Zhao into destroying all of his own ships by basically, taunting him and saying, oh, you missed me. Oh, you can't hit me. Oh, you're a terrible firebender. Oh, no wonder that you're not a master. Oh, no wonder Zhang said this about you. And he keeps like egging him on and getting him to keep shooting more and more fire until the point where Zhao says, now I've got you cornered. And Aang's like, do you though? He flies away, and Zhao just like looks, and his whole face just drops like, oh God, what did I do?
Zhang was right.
Yeah,
that was a great line.
He made him beat himself, and that's a boxing strategy. I know Keith knows that well. He loves boxing and MMA. So, it's a strategy. You wear out your opponent, and then in Aang's case here, he just leaves.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that wraps up these 2 episodes. What did you guys think? Should we do like an overall review, or should we do them per episode?
I think overall.
All right, what do you think, Dave? Go ahead and start us off.
Overall, I'm going to put in both episodes, I still don't think I've seen a bad episode of this show. But this goes in depth on where it needs to go in depth. Rating, I would give it an 8.5 for both of them.
Yeah, for me, once again, I think we get excellent character development throughout these episodes. Katara's jealousy over Aang, kind of learning this quicker than she is with the new scroll and just kind of adapting to waterbending faster than her. Even though she never had a master, she's self-taught. I think she should take that into consideration. We see Iroh with the peace, and that's what leads them to find the Team Avatar, as we'll call them. And even Sokka, turning the pirates and Zuko and them against each other so they could escape in that first episode, just does so much. And then in the Deserter, we find out so much, thought has been put into the past with, who his former student was, and he's a master, and he's the first one to leave, and why he left. Because he really does. He's not a fan of his power. He wishes he was a waterbender who could heal instead of destroying with fire. I think they just put so much into each character that no one is brought onto screen for these episodes that they haven't thought through and decided who he's going to be and why he's going to be that way. And it really shines through in these 2 episodes. And, I'm with Dave. I have not seen an episode that hasn't been good of this show yet. And the more I watch, the more I enjoy it. I definitely think these scores are going to be a little higher because of all of the great episodes that have led up to it. But I'm definitely, going to go like 9.2 out of 10 for these episodes. The pace was good. We learned a ton. They had great action. Everything that you want in an episode was in both of these episodes. And I think it was just a great job. I loved it.
Yeah, I almost have nothing to add to what you guys have said. I completely agree with you guys. They are great. I haven't seen a bad episode. Well, we haven't watched an episode that we've reviewed that I've seen that has been bad yet. There might be a couple of stinkers mixed in there that we haven't seen yet, but so far I haven't seen any bad episodes. And out of these two, yeah, easily I want to give it a 9 out of 10 because it was great. Just like you said, great pacing. In The Deserter, especially, an amazing score. I loved the musical cues, especially when Aang loses control and shoots fire at Katara and everything. I love this idea of learning more about where firebending, how people learn firebending and like what its roots are. I love the fact that we learned so much more about how the Fire Nation views Roku, and I love this. As you said, Keith, I love this sort of comparison to between Zhao and Zuko, and I'm kind of curious to see, is Zuko going to eventually learn from his mistakes and continue adhering to the basics and maintaining control over his firebending, or is he going to end up going down the road of Zhao and just trying to move as quick as he can to get to the top in order to catch the Avatar, because that is his primary goal. So I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to review more of these episodes with you guys. So far, I've been blown away. I think this series is great, and I'm looking forward to the next one. But I want to know what all of you guys thought. So let us know in the comments down below. Is there anything that we forgot to mention? Anything that we missed? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you for the next review.